In this video, we'll learn how to group data in a pivot table and summarize a pivot table with a pivot chart. So let's look at the data in travel data temp. So we're trying to figure out who in a small town spends a lot of money on travel. What information do we have? The amount of money each person spent on travel, their age, and their gender. So who spent a lot of money on travel? Now, this is not a real example. I made up this data. It may be true. It may not be true. But let's try and slice and dice this data. That's what pivot tables are about, trying to find structure in seemingly unstructured data. So I go insert pivot table with my cursor inside the data, existing worksheet. Let's first figure out, do men or women spend more money on travel? I don't know. So I'll drag gender to the row field, and I can put amount spent on travel to the values field. Now what you'll see here is the total amount men and women spent on travel. To be honest, that's useless. You want to know the average amount each man and woman spent on travel. So if you double click here, you can change the way the data is summarized. Click from sum to change it to average. Now we see the men and women seem to spend about the same amount of money on travel. That doesn't help us know who to mail to. So we put our cursor inside the pivot table, and now the show field list should show up again, but it's not. But if I right click, I can bring it back with show field list, and often it disappears. But a little tip on pivot tables and Excel in general, if you don't know what to do next, right click, and Excel will usually provide you with good options. So if I say show field list, okay, well, I've got it there. So let's now drag gender out of the pivot table, and let's do a breakdown by age. So I'll drag age here, and now I know the average amount 25-year-olds spent on travel, 26-year-olds. That's almost TMI, too much information. I would like to group this data in 10-year increments. So if I right click and I click group, Excel suggests grouping in 10-year increments. So now I can go 25 to 34-year-olds, etc. Now I still see each age group spends about the same amount on travel. That doesn't help me much. So how about if I break it down by age and gender? Drag gender to the column field. We will get the filters, don't worry. I know that's probably bothering some of you. So we go to gender. Now what we see, look at this, made up data. As the women get older, they spend more on travel. As the men get older, they spend less on travel. So who should you mail to? The old women and the young men. Now, when I first did this example in class, the movie Titanic had come out, and my student said that would be some kind of cruise. Now, can we summarize this data in a pivot chart? If you are inside a pivot table, when you go analyze, okay, pivot chart comes up, and you can pick the type of chart you want. Excel tries to suggest for you a chart. This chart's fine. Okay, so what that will show us, if I drag it down there, is basically as we get, blue is the women. As they get older, they spend more. And as the men get older, they spend less. And if you look at the sum of the blue bar and the red bar, basically in each age group, they're about the same. So that chart tells you everything you need to know. Once you have a really good pivot chart, you almost don't need the pivot table. In the next video, we'll show you how to create a pivot table even when your data is categorical and contains no numbers.